And so what I want to do is I'm going to give you 3 practical steps that we see from Jesus, that if we practice these steps over and over and over again, we're going to become good at listening well. So here's the first step. Let go of any judgments and assumptions that you have. How many of you here walk into conversations already assuming the way that conversation is going to go? Yeah, a lot of us do that. And to be honest with you, this is something that I really struggle with. So when I get a message from a friend or a coworker and they want to have a conversation with me, I immediately begin to worry. Then I start having the conversation in my head and I play out scenario after scenario after scenario. And then when I eventually get to the place where we're about to have the conversation, I'm actually so worried about what I'm thinking that I miss out on what the other person has to say. Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the habits he talked about is this: seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. Reminds me of one of Solomon's Proverbs, Proverbs 18. It says, "It's stupid and embarrassing to give an answer before you listen." See, when you judge and assume things, what you're doing is you're saying that you have an answer before you even hear what the other person has to say or what the other person is talking about. It makes it about you, not about them. And you end up closing the doors to any new information, and it's more or less likely that you're going to pay attention and you're going to listen to them. See, Jesus let go of assumptions, right? With the blind beggar, he didn't assume what he wanted to do to get healed. No, he asked him. And when we let go of judgments and assumptions, it actually helps us become more curious, and it helps us focus on the other person and helps us understand them more, which again shows them that you value them, which helps them feel loved. All right, here's the second step. Put away distractions. Now, here's a simple definition of the distraction. It's this: something that turns your attention away from something you want to focus on. See, distractions will take your focus away from neighbors. You're the person that you're trying to get to know. So if you want to listen to them well, you need to be 100% focused on them. You know, Jesus did this well. You know, with the blind beggar, he didn't shout at him from across the road. No, he had somebody go and grab the blind beggar and bring it to him so that he could sit there and be 100% focused on him. See, we need to put away anything that's stopping that. You know, and I know this can be difficult because we're in a world that's full of distractions. So any of the simple little things we do can matter to people. You know, if we just take our phone and flip it upside down so we don't see any of the alerts as they're coming in, or maybe fold up our computer screens, or turn away from, the TV screens. When we do that, it'll help us be more focused, more attentive. And what you're doing is you're showing that person that in that moment, they are more important than anything else going on. And sometimes, these distractions we're going to have, they're going to be mental. They're not just going to be physical. So we've got to do whatever we can to prepare ourselves to go into that conversation well. We need to clear our minds of the clutter from that day, or at least silo it for the moment. And some of us, we're going to have to take the medication that helps us focus, so make sure we do that ahead of time. Again, we got to do whatever it takes to make sure that we can focus 100% on our neighbor. All right, the third step is this. We need to ask good questions. Now, I grew up in and spent 20 years working in the restaurant business. And it's in this business that I learned the value of asking the right questions. My money, right? The tips depended on it. For example, if you went to a burger joint and you ordered a burger and it came out with blue cheese and you wanted cheddar cheese on it, why did that happen? Well, probably because the waiter didn't ask you the right question. He didn't ask you what cheese you wanted. And he assumed that you wanted blue cheese. Now, why would anybody assume that somebody wants blue cheese on their burger? I have no idea well, but you're sitting there with blue cheese on your burger and you probably won't tip as well. Now, Jesus, he was amazing at asking good questions. As we look through the scriptures of his life, one of the things that we see is he asked 307 questions and he only answered 3 of them. See, it's obvious. One of the ways that Jesus loved in the simplest way was to ask good questions and to listen. So what are good questions? Well, good questions are the questions that help you learn more about your neighbor, and the questions that give them plenty of space to speak. And we want to learn 4 different areas of our neighbors' lives, and we call those 4 areas the 4 H's. And here's the number 1 area of their lives that we want to get to know. It's their history. We want to know where they grew up. We want to know what their life experiences were like. So some great questions to ask them would be, hey man, tell me a little bit about your story. Or hey, tell me a little bit about the place that you grew up. Now, here's the second area of their life that we want to get to know, and that's their heart. Right? This is what the neighbor cares about. This is what makes them tick. So we want to ask them questions like, what's your favorite sports team? What's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite vacation destination? All right. The third area of their lives that we want to get to know is the area where it comes to their habits, right? These are the things that our neighbors are into. These are the things that they love to do. And so we need to ask them simple questions like, how do you have fun? How do you burn off your steam? What do you do that you really enjoy doing? And these first 3 areas of the lives to get to know, these help us connect with them and help us find something in common with them. But this 4th area, this area helps us understand how we can serve them. And that's the area of their hurts. See, this helps us understand the things that they're questioning, things that they're struggling with, the pains they might be feeling. Now, these aren't the questions that you begin with. You don't drop these questions on them right away. You wait till you develop a relationship with them for a little while. But these are questions like, hey, how are you doing with blank? And you can really put any situation in there. How are you doing being a father? How are you doing with being a husband? How are you doing, with being a student? Or another question would be, how did it feel when blank happened? How did it feel when your dad died? How did it feel when your son got arrested? And here's what I want you to do. I want you to listen closely to how they respond. Don't speak, just listen. I'm an extreme extrovert. And that means that I love hanging out with people and I love talking with people, but the problem is that I love talking. See, I wasn't always a great listener naturally, and I didn't even know this about myself until actually a customer of mine at one of the restaurants called me out on this. One day at the restaurant, he called me over to me, he says, hey, Forrest, you're a good dude, and I know that you like coming over here and talking to me, but I don't feel like you care about what I have to say. You don't really pay attention to me. And here's the reason I'm telling you this, is because I see you doing this with other people all the time. And when I heard that from him, dude, I was shocked. But more importantly, I was embarrassed. See, by talking all the time in those conversations, I made those conversations about me, not the customer I was trying to get to know. And maybe I was even pushing some of them away. And since that moment, I've really changed the way that I have conversations. I talk less. I listen more. I ask good questions. And now it's helped me get to know people on a whole new level because I'm finding out so much more about who they are. Where they grew up, what their hobbies are, the things they're struggling with. And it's helped me become a better friend to my neighbors. Now, here's how this blessed principle has played out in my life recently. My son, Amiko, he plays on the Franklin lacrosse team, and there's a bunch of kids on this team. And we don't really know many of the families that are on this team. And so my wife and I were having a conversation a couple weeks ago, and we said, hey, we need to get to know who these people are and their families are. And so what we decided to do was throw a party. We said we'll invite everybody over to our house, and not just the kids, but we wanted to invite the families and the parents and get everybody over there so that we can get to know them. And this is something that we do naturally. We love to throw parties. It really works out well for us, and we always have fun doing them. But you know what's unnatural for us? It's having conversations with 30 people that you don't know. But our goal, was to get to know these people. That was our goal of these parties. So we walked around and we had conversations and we listened and we asked good questions, and something really cool happened because it was difficult at first, but then something really cool happened. I met one of the dads, and we found out that we both grew up in the same neighborhood. We're both Kazi kids from the south side. And now when we walk by each other at the practices and at the games, instead of giving that awkward, I think I know who you are, what we do is we give each other a fist bump and yell at South Side, and it's fun. Now, this guy isn't my best friend by any means, but he's not a stranger anymore. See, 3 simple little steps. You let go of any judgments and assumptions you have, put away any distractions, and ask good questions. See, if you take these steps, they'll not only allow you to become a better listener, they'll help you become a better friend to your neighbor. The more I look at Jesus' life and the way that he modeled loving his neighbors, it really was the frequent and ordinary actions that he did, that stand out for me. The moments where he paused. He pulled up a chair, he sat in front of somebody, he looked them in the eyes, and he listened. Now, Jesus did amazing things. He healed people. He fed thousands of people. He even raised a dude from the dead. But here's the point I don't want you to miss. Living your life, following Jesus' example of how he loved others, is not a journey of the extraordinary. No. It's a journey that's lived out in the simple, everyday moments of life. Because it's in those moments where we find the most amount of opportunity to love someone else. So I have this question for you. Do you love your neighbors the same way Jesus does? Does your heart break for your neighbors? And if it does, here's what you need to do. You need to partner with God in only what he can do. I don't want you to underestimate the power of beginning with prayer and listening. See, these are just simple things you can do to begin loving your neighbor. And the remaining ways that we're going to talk about over the next couple weeks are great, but here's what I can promise you. They will not be as effective unless you begin with prayer and you listen.